think people really fail to understand is just that the fact that the Vietnam War was the first televised war. You hear about war, you read about it in the papers, but you never actually see what it constitutes.
My grandpa actually served in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and when he volunteered to join the Navy, a lot of his friends didn't really respect that decision. They kind of lost respect for them, and as a result their friendship kind of disintegrated. And my grandpa's still kind of sad about the fact that he and his fellow soldiers will never be truly mourned by their generation.
I think that it is tragic that many of these soldiers that were drafted into Vietnam or volunteered to go to Vietnam developed PTSD as a result of the actions that they were forced to do. And as a result of the PTSD that they developed, they were dishonorably discharged from the military. But they got the dishonorable discharge from going and being drafted into the Vietnam War and then getting PTSD. I mean, it's just a terrible catch-22.
The Vietnam War was one of the darkest moments of our history. Not only did we go into it without knowing all of the facts, but when the soldiers came back, we didn't treat them like we do today. We ostracized them.
They actually believed that war is just like this for Vietnam, but in reality, war has always been like this. And that's just really leads to like their negative view.
Looking at it today, we realize that we shouldn't be too quick to judge, because we don't know the extremity and the atrocities that happen in war to maintain peace and to ultimately achieve that for the betterment of the world.
And on behalf of the millennials, we thank you for your unremitting strength of character and courage. But most importantly, we thank you for your service to this country.
Please join me. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this one day out of the year that we can pause and just focus on those men and women who have served our nation, who have sacrificed for the noble cause of freedom. Our Father, let us never take for granted the gifts that our servicemen and women have given to us in providing a free nation and a unique way of life here in America. We pray right now for all those men and women who are serving overseas in harm's way. We ask for a shield of protection around each one of them, bring them all safely back home. And we pray that you would bless each one. Amen. We'll now have the presentation of the colors. Please stand.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's reckless still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. Place your hand over your heart and let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated.
Good afternoon again, and welcome to the 2014 Veterans Day ceremony in the city of Mission Viejo. I am Trish Kelly. I am the mayor of the city of Mission Viejo, and we are pleased today to be able to honor those men and women who currently serve and have served in our nation in the armed forces. We always must remember that there is a price for freedom, and we're grateful to those who have paid that price through their service to our nation. Members of my family have helped to pay that price. My father was in the Army Air Corps in World War II. He flew bombing missions over Europe. His plane was actually shot down. Years after the war, he said, "We always knew we would win that war." My father-in-law was in the Navy, and he served on a ship that was hit by a kamikaze. He paid a price also. He made it. And my husband, Jack, served in the Marine Corps as a pilot. And so many of you have served and have stories of courage to tell as well. I'm reminded of the words of President Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States when men were free. We must never take our freedom for granted. And I'm thankful that today we have an opportunity to honor our veterans. Also, as a Marine wife, I can't go any further without saying happy birthday to our Marines. Yesterday, November 10th, marked the 239th birthday of the Marine Corps, and again, President Ronald Reagan said, "Some people live an entire lifetime and wonder if they have made a difference. Marines don't have that problem." Happy birthday, Marines. I would like to make some introductions now. I'd like to introduce my fellow council members who are with me up on stage. Mayor Pro Tem Dave Leckness. Councilmember Rhonda Reardon. Councilmember Frank Urey. Councilmember Kathy Schlicht. And in the audience today, I would like to introduce our 3 council members elect who are here with us today. Wendy Bucknam, Ed Sachs, and Colonel Greg Raths. I'd like to thank Don Wright for again blessing us today with your beautiful voice. Thank you for your rendition of the national anthem. We're also pleased to have Colonel Paul Nugent, the commander of our adopted Marine Battalion, Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division, and our guest speaker, Franz Vandenbroek, Septine McKinney, veteran of the U.S. Air Force and Mission Viejo's Veteran of the Year, and Mike Waugh, veteran of the U.S. Army and Mission Viejo's Veteran of the Year. Please thank them. And I would like to recognize some of our city family who may be here with us today. I will ask you to stand when your group is announced. Former mayors and city council members, former and current members of our city commissions, the Community Service Commission, the Investment Advisory Commission, Planning and Transportation Commission, members of our city committees, the Marine Adoption Committee, the Senior Citizens Activities Committee, the Senior Community Activity Committee, the Cultural Arts Committee, the Character Committee, the Heritage Committee, Student Advisory Committee, members of the Veterans of Foreign War, members of the American Legion, members of the Mission Viejo Adopted Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division, our city manager, Dennis Wilberg, and members of our talented city staff. I also would like to thank you. I would also like to thank the members of the Mission Viejo High School Drama Program for the video that you were able to enjoy prior to our program beginning. This was done by Mission Viejo High School students Rachel Umana and Jason Mars. They produced and created this film as part of the City of Mission Viejo's Vietnam-era tribute event. On September 20th of this year, the city and our Marine and Sailors Adopted Committee hosted more than 500 Vietnam veterans, and we gave them a welcome home that they never received when they returned to America 4 decades ago. Again, we're so thankful for all of you veterans who are here today. And I'm very pleased to welcome the commanding officer of our adopted Marine Battalion, Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division, Camp Pendleton, Colonel Paul Nugent. It is our city's honor to be involved with this battalion, and we're very grateful that the Colonel has joined us for our recognition today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Colonel Nugent. He is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Pennsylvania State University. He was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in 1992. Over the past 22 years, he has had a distinguished and very impressive career. He is a U.S. Marine infantry officer and has served as a platoon commander, company commander, and infantry battalion commander. He has had multiple staff assignments as an operations officer and instructor, and he recently served on a joint U.S. military assignment as a planner and strategist for the U.S. Africa Command. Over a 7-year period from 2003 through 2010, Colonel Nugent served in 4 combat deployments. He served in 3 combat deployments in Iraq, including the initial invasion of 2003, again in 2006 and 2007, and a 3rd time in 2008 and 2009. He also served one combat deployment in Afghanistan in 2010. He is a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Naval War College, where he received a master's degree in national security and strategic studies. His personal awards include 3 Bronze Star Medals, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, the Joint Service Commendation Medal, 2 Navy Commendation Medals, the Joint Service Achievement Medal, the Navy Achievement, and the Combat Action Ribbon. He assumed command of our headquarters battalion in July of 2014. Please join me in welcoming an American hero, Colonel Paul Nugent.
Only those fit to live are not afraid to die. President Theodore Roosevelt. These words are inscribed on a large white marble fountain in a very remote and rural town in northern France. Today in 2014, this fountain in the town of Chamaret, France, sits alongside an old country road, and in between an old barn and stable. You could drive right past it unless you knew what you were looking for. The fountain was dedicated in 1919 by the mother of Lieutenant Quentin Roosevelt to commemorate his service and sacrifice during the First World War. You see, in 1917, Quentin Roosevelt dropped out of Harvard University and joined the Army, eventually becoming a pilot and flying with the 95th Aero Squadron in France during the Great War. In the spring and summer of 1918, during the German Ludendorff offensives, the final German push to end the war before America could mobilize, on June 14th, Quentin was shot down over German lines and killed. Recovered by the Germans, Quentin was buried not very far from where that white marble fountain sits today, a small grave marker identifying him as such. At the same time Quentin was fighting and killed, one of his older brothers, a lieutenant colonel and commander of the 1st Battalion of the 26th Infantry, 1st U.S. Infantry Division, was defending in sector north of Paris with his soldiers and French and British counterparts to stem the tide of the German offensive. Fast forward 26 years after the end of World War I, and now during the Operation Overlord in World War II, the Allied invasion of the French coast at Normandy in June of 1944, or D-Day as we all know it. Quentin's older brother, as I mentioned, in World War I, Theodore Roosevelt Jr., now a brigadier general and the assistant division commander of the 4th U.S. Infantry Division, died in battle. He succumbed to years of soldiering, numerous skirmishes, and 2 world wars. He died near Cherbourg, France, a town 60 miles northwest of the invasion beaches where he landed on D-Day. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, and today is buried not far from where he died at the Normandy American Cemetery at Omaha Beach in France. 10 years after World War II, and in 1955, Lieutenant Quentin Roosevelt, the pilot I mentioned that was killed in World War I, and until then interred at Chamaret, France, was moved and buried next to his brother, Theodore, at the Normandy American Cemetery. Today, both brothers are buried side by side in Section D, Row 28, graves 45 and 46, in one of America's 25 permanent overseas cemeteries. Obviously, both brothers are the children and sons of the late, great 26th President of the United States, Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. Himself a veteran, as were his 2 surviving sons, Archibald and Kermit, who both served and fought in World War I and II, making all 4 of his sons veterans of the Great War. Good afternoon, veterans, Mayor Kelly, state and local officials, city council members, ladies and gentlemen, family members, guests, and citizens of Mission Viejo. As mentioned, my name is Colonel Paul Nugent, and I'm the commanding officer of Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division. It's my pleasure to be here today with my Sergeant Major Dan Flegel, to commemorate Veterans Day and recognize all our armed forces veterans. and participate in the ceremony to honor Mission Viejo's Veterans of the Year. I have the great privilege and honor to be associated with the City of Mission Viejo via the city's unique Marine Adoption Committee. You see, the City of Mission Viejo has adopted the unit I'm a part of and the one I command. What does this mean? It means that together we have forged a relationship to recognize service and patriotism. Most importantly, it means that this great city takes pride in honoring its armed forces veterans and the men and women on active duty today. As you're aware, the city goes to great lengths to honor, support our service past or present, whether through outreach, volunteering, support to our military families, events like today, or visiting and caring for our wounded and disabled warriors at our Wounded Warrior facility at Camp Pendleton, or here in your retirement communities in Mission Viejo goes above and beyond. For that, I'm truly grateful. And on behalf of the Marines and sailors of Headquarters Battalion, the 1st Marine Division, and my commanding general, General Nicholson, thank you for all you do for Headquarters Battalion and veterans everywhere. While the story of the Roosevelts may be unique, it illustrates the common willingness of our country's men and women to serve their nation, regardless of the inherent dangers associated with that service. A tradition of moral and physical courage to serve and sacrifice, knowing full well the possibility of that service will involve combat or conflict and great personal risk. And that is why twice a year we stop to honor our veterans who have paid the ultimate sacrifice on 2 very important national holidays. Today, November 11th, Veterans Day, and at the end of May for Memorial Day. Veterans Day is a celebration to honor America's veterans of military service for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. Shortly after World War I, America established Armistice Day to recognize Americans like the Roosevelts and 4.5 million other Americans who fought so bravely in Europe in the First World War. In 1926, America formalized Armistice Day as a national holiday to be recognized every year on November 11th to commemorate the end of World War I. Later in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower changed and renamed the holiday to Veterans Day to recognize all America's veterans, not just those of the Great War. Today we honor veterans of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and all conflicts, skirmishes, and military operations in between. Some 20 million American veterans are alive today, and today, most importantly, we celebrate their service. In 1954, President Eisenhower declared, I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States of America, do hereby call upon all of our citizens to observe November 11th as Veterans Day. On this day, let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, on foreign shores, to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace so that their efforts shall have not been in vain. Obviously, Mission Viejo has heard and answered that call today. But the world remains an uncertain place, and enduring peace has been elusive over the last 13 years. Future conflict will be complex, and state and non-state actors, terrorists, and the like will continue to threaten U.S. security and vital national interests. What America will always require is selfless service, sacrifice, and leadership from its citizens to answer their nation's call, to protect and preserve our freedoms, or those not afraid to sacrifice, as President Roosevelt alluded to in my earlier quote. As we pause today on Veterans Day to honor those who have committed themselves to protect the freedoms we enjoy, we must never forget their sacrifices. To those veterans here today and everywhere, thank you. And thank you, Mission Viejo, for answering the call and taking the time to honor veterans and your Veterans of the Year. Semper Fidelis.
She stands danger. There are those who gave their lives. They're the world's greatest heroes, but we won't forget the sacrifice. So raise the banner, call on glory. Let us join our fellow man. History will write the story. America will always stand. America is not divided. Our enemies, they will be stopped. 'Cause we the people are united and still one nation under God. So raise the banner, hold on glory. Let us join our fellow man. History will write the story. America will always stand. History will write the story. America will always stand.
Don, I love that. I haven't heard you do that kind of country feel to it, and I love that. How about singing Merle Haggard's "A Fight Inside of Me"? That's a great one, right? You better believe it. Hey, great, Don. And Don, if you don't know, is the voice of the Anaheim Ducks, and her mom and grandparents are right over here. Stand up over there. The mom and the grandparents, veterans. Great job, Don. Keep it up. Colonel Nugent, thank you for reminding us that this is a day of celebration, okay? This is a day that we celebrate the military, we celebrate the veterans. We recently went down to Camp Pendleton, and I tell you, I mean, it's awesome, all the equipment that they have there. You know, we all say, hey, we're for peace, but we're for peace through massive fighting, superior power. Am I right about that? That's exactly what we want. We love those tanks and everything. I love it. All right. Franz Vandenbroek, I'm about to introduce here. His stories are so great. You see from your program that he entered the military in '66. He was in there until '69. A few months ago, we had a Vietnam celebration here, and we heard the stories of the Vietnam veterans, and they weren't great stories. They were stories where they came back and they were shunned, and no one said thank you, and nobody said welcome home. It was a total different war than all the others. So it affected you Vietnam veterans. In fact, if you're a Vietnam veteran, raise your hand, shake your hand if you've got any of you out there. Thank you very much for being here. Franz Vandenbroek was on helicopter duty. He's got stories of being with a team. Can you imagine what it's like to be shot down, to lose men and friends? He's got those stories. He's going to share some stuff today. And Franz, when you come up here, don't hold back. This is a group that you can talk from the heart and give it to us. We can take it full bore. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our keynote speaker, Franz Vandenbroek.
Oh, my goodness. My life sounds so much more interesting when Dave describes it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, for that very generous introduction. And thank you, folks, for being here today and sharing this very special event with us in this incredibly festive setting. Mission Viejo certainly knows how to do Veterans Day, right? And for that, we should all be grateful. Now then, there's an old saying that many of you may be familiar with: all is fair in love and war. And that phrase seems to imply some sort of equivalence between love and war. But in my mind, those words seem more like polar opposites, are they not? And so I wondered, is it ever even appropriate for the words love and war to coexist in the same sentence? Well, I've pondered that question a bit, and I've reached a conclusion. And a few minutes from now, I'll share it with you. But first, we have some formalities to get out of the way. Good afternoon. I'm Franz Vandenbroek. And some of you here today might be of the opinion that my name is better suited for a fair-complexioned, blonde and blue-eyed Dutchman. And you would be half right. I am, in fact, Dutch-Indonesian, born and raised in Indonesia, which for 400 years was a Dutch colony. And when one country colonizes another, some of the colonists, males typically, will marry some of the indigenous folk, females, hopefully, and have children that look like me, and like my siblings, and like my Auntie Pauline in the second row over there. We were Dutch-speaking, Dutch citizens growing up in Indonesia, but we have kind of a mysterious Asian thing going on. In 1958, when I was 10 years old, things turned violent and ugly in Indonesia, and all the Dutch and the Dutch Indonesians were forced to flee the country. Our lives were at risk. And our family of 6 eventually found refuge in America. We settled in Cyprus, in North Orange County, just up the road from here. And all 6 of us also believed that we owed our new adopted country a debt, a family debt. We just weren't quite sure how to pay it. And then the war in Vietnam broke out, and our military needed young men. Mom and Dad knew exactly what war was all about. In World War II, Dad was a POW of the Japanese for 3 years. Nevertheless, in our family, serving in the military was considered honorable, and perhaps an appropriate means for paying down the family debt. So in 1966, I turned 18 and joined the Army, and 1 year later, found myself with the 68th Assault Helicopter Company, the top Tigers based at Benoit, northeast of Saigon. My job description was Huey Helicopter Crew Chief Door Gunner. My duty station was a little canvas stool in the open doorway on the left side of a Huey, where I sat, unprotected, with an M60 machine gun in my hands. I flew my first combat mission in April of 1968, delivering troops and supplies, evacuating casualties and prisoners. By mid-May, I had lost 3 helicopters and 2 pilots to enemy action and a crash. Did I mention I was 19 years old? By June, I was transferred to the gunship platoon. Helicopter gunships don't carry troops and supplies. Gunships are heavily armed attack helicopters that only fly and fight. And for the next 6 months, I flew nearly every day, until November 1968, when my year in Vietnam was over. But instead of rotating home, I concluded my place was with my buddies in Vietnam, and I extended my tour by 6 months and made 3. In March 1969, while attacking an enemy position, my gunship plowed into a rice paddy, rolled over, disintegrated, and I was medevaced out of Vietnam, a 20-year-old casualty of the war. And although I can't say that I was comfortable, I was feeling very satisfied that the family debt had at least partially been paid. Shortly after discharge, in July of 1969, I drove to a courthouse in Los Angeles, took an exam, raised my right hand, and proudly became an American citizen. Yes. Thank you. You folks must be citizens too then, am I right? I'd left Vietnam in a hurry. Never had a chance to say goodbye to my buddies there, and we lost track of each other for the next 35 years. But then about 10 years ago on the internet, I found the name of a Vietnam veteran that sounded familiar. Ron Sheffield lives in Salinas, California. When I was flying helicopter gunships in Vietnam, our platoon leader was a career military officer, a pilot named Captain Sheffield. His was a very prestigious and responsible position, and he filled it superbly. When there was enemy to be engaged, he would take his platoon into combat, always with his helicopter up front. Captain Sheffield was fearless. I had a photograph of Captain Sheffield standing in front of my helicopter with a huge smile on his face. That smile was his trademark. And so I called Ron Sheffield in Salinas, and sure enough, it was him. He'd gone on to serve 3 tours in Vietnam, retired as a lieutenant colonel, then went to work for Lockheed, training space shuttle astronauts for the Hubble telescope repair missions. He also told me he'd be visiting his son in Riverside in a few weeks' time and asked if I would join him for dinner. So on that day, my wife and I drove to Riverside, and as I walked up the footpath towards Captain Sheffield's son's house, I was feeling nervous and apprehensive. There's a hierarchy in the Army. There are officers, there are enlisted men, and the Army forbids fraternization between the two. Pilots were officers. Gunners and crew chiefs were enlisted. But although the pilots were in charge of the mission, when the enemy opened fire, pilots could not readily defend themselves. They were busy piloting. And truth be told, the bad guys would usually try to shoot the pilots first. So for protection, pilots depended on a gunner and the crew chief in the back seat. With the machine guns in our hands, our job was to see the enemy first and to pull the trigger first. So as I rang the doorbell at Captain Sheffield's son's house, I didn't know what to expect. But then the door flung open, and out rushed an elderly man that I might not have recognized, but for the smile on his face. And I held out my hand and said, "Captain Sheffield, I presume." And he said, "No, it's Ron." And then he hugged me. We spent a wonderful evening having dinner and telling lies about how fearless we used to be. We also agreed to meet again 3 months later in Nashville, Tennessee. Our Vietnam unit was having a reunion there for the very first time. So on that day, my wife and I flew into Nashville, and as I marched into the lobby of the hotel where the reunion was to be held, I was greeted with open arms, handshakes, and hugs by older men, pilots, that I once addressed as Sir and Lieutenant and Captain, but who now simply introduced themselves as Stan and Lee and Ed. We spent a wonderful 3 days expressing appreciation for each other and telling lies about how fearless we used to be. I learned 2 important things in Nashville that weekend. One, our officer pilots actually have first names. Who knew? But more importantly, I learned that there is no stronger bond between men than there is between men who've been in combat together. And that bond transcends rank, age, race, religion, background, social status, and even 35 years of separation. So, is it ever appropriate for the words love and war to coexist in the same sentence? I believe you veterans here today know the answer. And do you have any idea how extraordinary you truly are? There's really not that many of you, and your numbers are shrinking. And you vets have lived, shaped, and made history. When your country went to war and needed young men and women, you raised your hand and said, I'll go. And much later, when your country said to you, you've done enough now, you may go home. Your buddies will carry on the fight. Many of you said, I can't do that. My place is here, with them. And you did these things because you loved your buddies, and you clearly love your country. And today, at events just like this one throughout our United States, your country sends you a little love back. Thank you for your service. If I might be allowed a postscript, I have given this presentation 15 times in the last 5 years, and in that time period, Captain Sheffield has never heard it. Until today, he's sitting in the second row. 6. You'll recognize him by the smile on his face. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you very much, friends. I think these ceremonies would be so much more fun if the politicians got out of the way and we just stopped and listened the whole time. As Dave says, can I get an amen? Exactly. So it's great to be here, and you know, a lot of the discussions we're talking about and the conflicts we talk, they all have names, and we understand them by the different conflict names that have come up. But we also had a very long war, the Cold War, between World War II and the end of the Soviet Empire. And candidly, that's one I'm a little bit familiar with. As many of you know, my father was Hungarian, and he actually escaped after the revolution in the 50s. And what I haven't told a lot of people is he escaped with his cousin, who they were basically brothers. They had grown up together, and they escaped. They started off their refugee life in Austria, in a little town, and they spent 6 months eating Velveeta cheese. And I can't remember what the other thing, but anyway, for the rest of my life, my dad, for the rest of his life, he couldn't eat Velveeta cheese. Spit it out like Forrest Gump, just couldn't handle it. But when they came over here and they landed in New York City, my father went to go find a job, and his cousin enlisted in the Army. He hadn't been here more than a day, enlisted, and was deployed in Germany, and it wasn't an active service, but was killed over there. And it was interesting being raised in America and living the Cold War through a Hungarian's eyes, because he would have all of the newspapers. You get the American side, and then he'd have, as he called them, the underground newspapers. And he would tell, and to be able to follow the progression and to understand that just last week we've celebrated the 25th anniversary of the falling of the Berlin Wall, to know that he was there, and he called it. He called it decades before it happened, but it finally did. And the reason it happened was because of the veterans that were there standing ready to go at a moment's notice, helping us during the Cold War. Anyway. So as we celebrate veterans today, we realize we're not just celebrating your service, but also the service and sacrifice of your families. Their service and your patriotism, honest to goodness, changes lives. And one of the things that we're responsible for, and I love seeing all the generations here, it's our responsibility not just to honor them today, to make sure we pass it on to the kids. They need to understand, and they need to be here, because in 50 years, they've got to be honoring people as well as we are. So I'm very pleased, as a part of honoring our 2 Veterans of the Year, along with Mayor Kelly. Septine McKinney and Mike Waugh both chose a different path to service. One was drafted, one enlisted, but both gave enormously to their country. Septine served 8 years in the U.S. Air Force, and Mike deployed in Vietnam with the U.S. Army. While their service experience may have been vastly different, both accepted the challenge and made the call. Both served their country with honor and pride, and both have continued that service in their civilian life, and it's one of the cornerstones of Mission Viejo, is service. Our city is blessed to have been the beneficiary of much of that service, and it's with great pleasure and honor that we recognize them by the City of Mission Viejo and our sincere gratitude for our Veterans of the Year. So Septine, could you come on up, please? You get to go first. So the mayor has put together a very brief proclamation. I'll just read some of it. Whereas the City of Mission Viejo acknowledges Septine McKinney for her remarkable service to our country and our community by serving the U.S. Air Force, and whereas during her dedicated service, Septine began her military career as a jet engine mechanic. All right. And later she trained as a medical technician, and whereas since leaving the U.S. Air Force, Septine has spent many hours volunteering for the City of Mission Viejo Library and is an active member of the City of Mission Viejo Senior Citizen Committee. Now, Trish Kelly, by virtue of her authority, and on behalf of the members of the City Council, do hereby recognize Septine McKinney for her military service and her dedication to all veterans. Thank you very much. Okay. For you, I'll say a few words. You don't? Okay. Okay. But you get to stay here. We're doing pictures first? You never know the protocol. It's pictures, then. No, this is hers. The mayor's stepping on my lines. All right, go ahead. Where are you at? Okay, sounds good. All right, and now I'll ask Mike Watt to come up, and I'll read a little bit about his story. You know that we're recognizing him, that's great. Whereas Mike, as a native Californian, was first drafted in 1967 to the U.S. Army and spent basic training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And while most were transferred to infantry units, he was assigned to a unit at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, as a heavy equipment operator, and then later assigned to the 589th Engineer Battalion at Fort Hood, Texas. We have 580 engineer battalions? I'm glad to hear that. Whereas while being in Vietnam, Mike was assigned a wide variety of duties, including assisting the newly promoted Sergeant Major, and was later awarded the Army Commendation Medal for meritorious service. And whereas Mike is an active community local volunteer in many organizations, including but not limited to the American Legion, the Elks, the City Heritage Committee, the Marine and Sailors Adoption Committee, and has become an advocate for all veterans, we, by the virtue vested in the City Council, and on behalf of all of us, do recognize Mike L. Waugh for his military service and his community service to Mission Viejo. Thank you very much. All right. Would you like to say a few words? Okay. Okay. Oh, no. Take a picture. Take a picture. I'll do a picture and then we'll get you up here. So.
This was truly a surprise to me. If you would have asked me 10 years ago what I'd be doing, I had no idea when I quit working. But as you can see now, I have come to Mission Viejo, and I'm kept very busy through different organizations. Thank you for having me here.
All right. Thank you, Mike and Septine, for your service not only to our country, to our community, and to the freedoms that you offer us. At this time, I'd like to ask my council colleague, Kathy Schlick, to come up, and she will lead us recognizing all the veterans from the different conflicts.
Thank you, Frank. It is my honor to call to attention our heroes. Please join me in recognizing our heroes that are here today. Please rise when I announce the conflict in which you served our great nation, and remain standing until all the great wars have been announced. World War I and World War II. Please stand. Those who served Korea. Those who served during Vietnam. Or Lebanon. Oh, please keep standing. Lebanon, Grenada, Panama, Desert Storm, Somalia, Haiti, Operation Iraqi Freedom, the war in Afghanistan, Operation New Dawn, the war in Iraq, and all the veterans of all our wars, our retired vets, thank you so much. Our reservists, thank you. Please join me in a round of applause for these veterans. And next we have Dawn Wright. Thank you.
Sweet land of liberty, of the icy land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom feels like that above. Our Father's God, to the author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God, our King. From every mountainside, let freedom
Did those words just sink in? Let freedom ring. Thank you, Don, for your talent and for sharing with us today. I would like to thank all of you for joining us here today and to help us to show our gratitude for our armed services, men and women who are serving and who have served in the past. Today is just one day out of the year that we can stop everything we're doing and thank and honor those who have made a difference in our nation. But we should never take them for granted. We realize that our American way of life is unique, and it is due to the service and the sacrifice of our veterans. Winston Churchill once said of us, "The United States is like a gigantic boiler. Once the fire is lit under it, there is no limit to the power it can generate." And when he heard that the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor. He famously said that that night he slept the sleep of the saved because he knew that victory was certain because America had been wronged and he knew American character. As the historian Victor Davis Hanson has said, thank God we don't have to fight anyone like ourselves. Thank you, Colonel Nugent and Franz Vandenbroek, for your service and for your inspiring words today. They meant a lot to us. I'd like to personally thank all those who assisted in today's ceremony, including the members of the United States Marine Corps Headquarters Battalion, 1st Marine Division, the South Orange County Young Marines, VFW Post 6024, the Orange County Sheriff's Department, the City of Mission Viejo staff, and, of course, all of you veterans. At the conclusion of the ceremony, please join us at the Orchard Terrace in the back. We will be enjoying refreshments, compliments of Fairhaven Memorial Service, and It's a Grind Coffee House in Mission Viejo. We thank them for their generous donations. The remainder of our ceremony will consist of a 3-volley rifle salute provided by the Veterans of Foreign War Post 6024, followed by taps performed by Deputy David Saw. If you have young children, please be aware that there will be several very loud bursts during the 3-volley rifle salute, so prepare yourself for that. Thank you again for sharing your Veterans Day with us. It has been a great honor to be here today to recognize and to thank those who have served our nation.